Big Blue, bringing you the best in New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. Oh, my lung capacity is still not there. I'm dealing with these allergies and other things, and the pressure changes and the weather changes and everything else. It affects your lung capacity, and we're gonna have to give the intro another couple weeks or another couple days before we go back to doing it more often. Just wanted to talk about the playoffs. Will the Giants make the playoffs? Who knows? 6-10. I mean, you really don't want to say you don't want to make the playoffs. But it's one of those situations, but then you also don't want to be the joke of the league making the playoffs at 6-10. And I was thinking, what were some of the worst teams in the NFL to make the playoffs? And now I'm going to try to keep it in modern day NFL because everyone knows I go back a ways sometimes. And people are like, what the hell is he talking about? So I'm going to try to keep it within the last 20 years, maybe 30 years. And I had to think about this for a minute because as someone duly noted on one of my comment sections, you don't write anything down. You don't plan your shows. It's very unprofessional. You go off on tangents. I'm going to have a new button. It's going to call the tangent alert. And that's going to what's going to happen is when I hit that button, it's going to make a siren. And that means I'm going to go off on a tangent. Sort of like I just did. But you know what? I think it takes more effort to not write things down than it does to plan things out. I have no problem when people script things. That's fine. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. Like I said, I don't watch anybody else. I do watch Bad Dog on occasion because I like his stuff. But beyond that, I don't watch anybody else. But let's get into this for a second. I was thinking about it. So the Giants, let's say, get in the playoffs at 6-10, or let's say any team, because honestly, this can really go for any team in the NFC East, because it's either going to be a bad Washington team, a bad Giant team, or a bad Dallas team that gets in. So, but what were some of the worst teams to get into the playoffs? Now, the first thing that comes to mind they were not a bad team, but I was thinking about it. It would be the 2010 Seahawks. They were 7-9. There was like no way in hell you would thought they were going to make the playoffs, and they were one of the first teams since going back to 1982 that made it into the playoffs with a losing record. It was Pete Carroll's first season. I mean, there was really no expectations that year. And they still won a wild card game. I think who'd they beat? They beat the Saints. And then they lost in the next round to the Bears. But it was still a bad team that made the playoffs, and it was one of those few bad teams with a losing record that made the playoffs. The other team with a losing record that made the playoffs was the 2014 Carolina Panthers. They were 7-8-1. I remember that because Cam Newton, he hurt his back in a car accident. And somehow he only missed one game, and then the Panthers, they won, I think, 4 in a row to win the division. And then Carson Palmer tore his ACL that year as well. So, it was just a year where it was just a bad thing. And then they met up in week 15 and Drew Stanton went down to knee injury, leaving, what the hell was his name? Ryan Lindy as as this Carolina starting quarterback going into the playoff game against Carolina. And then the Panthers beat the Cardinals. What was the score? 27-16. But that was just a bad game overall. And then Carolina lost to the next week, which I think is funny because they lost to the Seahawks. And it was like 31-17 or something crazy like that. And then they went on to, of course, then Seattle went on to lose to the Patriots. And I think we remember how that game went. Another bad team that made the playoffs were the Giants, if anyone remembers, in 2006. That was Eli's third season with the team. They finished 8-8. But the Giants lost 6 out of their last 8 games. And it was funny though because they lost to the Eagles that year. And it was on a late second field goal. And I think the Eagles won like 23-20. I was actually at that game. And then Eli Manning, of course, led the Giants the next year to the Super Bowl. So everyone kind of forgets the 2006 season. And it was Eli's first foray into the playoffs. But, that was a bad team. You lose 6 out of your last 8, you probably shouldn't make the playoffs. I mean, you got lucky, you backed in. The Jets did the same thing in 91. They were 4-4 halfway through the season. And really the second half didn't go much better for them that year. I mean, they won. They had some close games. I remember that. And I remember them beating, like, the Dolphins and the Packers. But that was Bruce Coslett. And then the Jets lost to the Oilers. I think they lost to the Oilers. I don't remember who they lost to. Yeah, they lost to the Oilers. Yeah, that's right. Because I keep thinking the Oilers, because this was back in 91. Another bad team was going to be Cleveland. If anyone remembers the 85 Cleveland Browns. And that was the first time, really, that an 8-8 team got into the playoffs in the AFC. I mean, they had, who was that? Yeah, Bernie Kosar was still the quarterback. But I think he was split in time, and I can't remember the name. He's the quarterback. The quarterback was over for Detroit. Gary Danielson. And that was a Schottenheimer team. And of course they lost to the Dolphins in the playoffs in '85. I remember that. I actually remember that. I remember watching that game. I think it was on NBC, if I recall. But so, there is, I don't want to say a litany of teams that have made it. There's also got a team like the 2008 Chargers. That was another team. They kind of pulled that out at the end. And I remember they had a big win against the Broncos in like week 17, and they took the NFC title. And that was a Phillip Rivers team. And they knocked off Peyton. They knocked off Peyton Manning that year. And they lost to the Steelers, who went on to win the Super Bowl over the Cards. I mean, so there are a lot of bad teams that make the playoffs. But I think this year, coming out of the NFC East, there are going to be really a lot of bad teams. I'm not just putting this on the Giants. There are 3 bad teams who have the potential to make the playoffs. And I find it funny that the Giants in themselves could have anywhere between the 3rd pick in the draft or the 19th pick in the draft. 19th if they pick the playoffs, 3rd if there's a whole bunch of scenarios that go on. But honestly, I mean, I think it's just crazy that we're even talking about a 10-6 team making the playoffs. I mean, that just kind of makes me laugh. But hey, you know what? It's one of those things that someone's got to go. Someone's got to get in. So why not the Giants? Why not? I think they would host their NFC East. They would host the NFC East playoff game. We'd get a home playoff game even though no one can go. So why not? Why can't the Giants be that team? I remember in 1990, the Saints, and they were shooting for a wild card, and Jim Mora was still the coach. And I recall that game only because I recall that season because Steve Walsh was their starter, and he went like 6-5. And they had Ironhead on that team. I used to love that guy, Ironhead Hayward out of Pitt. Oh, I used to love him. I used to love watching him run. I love when he also went over to Atlanta, and they made the playoffs as well. And they lost to the Bears that year. They lost to Ditka's the Bears. So someone's got to make it. So why not the Giants? I'm losing some faith in the defense. The offense is nothing to write home about. I think Washington has a much better defense right now. And I think with Alex Smith coming, they're going to have the continuity and have the potential to beat the Eagles. But Jalen Hurts is playing well. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. And then the worst thing is, even if they lose Washington, we still got to beat Dallas. And I'm not 100% sure we have the ability to beat Dallas. Andy Dalton has turned it around these last 4 games for the Cowboys. I did not give the Cowboys credit because I didn't think they were going to have the opportunity to even jump back into this playoff race. But like I said, this season is so weird and this season is so convoluted. Any team, I would be shocked if the St. Louis Cardinals somehow wound up back into the division and went to the playoffs for the NFC East. People are going to be like, well, the Cardinals were never in the division. I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that in the comments. People are gonna need to go back and Google the Cardinals, because go Google Neil Lomax and Jim Hart and see what I'm talking about. But like I said, someone's got to make it, so why not the Giants? And again, this is Tim with Online Big Blue, bringing you the best in New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. And as always, if you could subscribe, if you could ring that bell, you know what that means, that'd be awesome.